So if you'll turn to page 12, and it says wants versus needs, and then there's an acronym, ACID, ACID, easy to remember. So in developing a high-performing sales group and taking people from good to great, right here on page 12 is something that if you can get your head around right now, take back to your offices, your people across the country, you can make change and improvement in the next few days. Because the outline here will solve some very specific problems that become inhibitors to closing sales, and we can make those inhibitors completely go away. Sound good? So here's the acronym. Arouse, this is the system, this is an acronym to talk about really a very simple system of selling. When we go to a house, our first goal is to arouse the prospect and affirm them. Second, we want to cultivate and rebuild our relationship, and we do that with questions. And then our goal is to get a free flow of information back and forth. By the way, how many of you teach your salespeople when you hire them and in your meetings that every sales meeting starts in an adversarial relationship? And that the goal of the visit in building trust and rapport is to move adversarial to cooperative. Now, if you don't believe that's true, it is true. Every buy-sell relationship starts with some degree of an adversarial relationship. And the reason is that the buyer has perceptions about the seller, and their goal is to get as much money as they can, as quickly as they can. It's all for them, and we got to protect ourselves. On the other hand, the seller goes to the house with the idea that the homeowner wants to get everything for as little as possible. They want a whole lot of money, a whole lot of quality for a little bit of money. Isn't that right? The salesman says, well, these people, they were price shoppers. All they wanted was everything for nothing. So when any time two people come together to discuss business and they bring those two mindsets or any variation of those two together, that starts adversarial. Now our goal then is to build trust and rapport to make it cooperative. Now how do we know we're in a cooperative relationship? It's very easy, although the average salesperson doesn't know this. It's very easy to know. It's when the information is free-flowing back and forth and they're giving you real information. In other words, you make a small presentation, ask a small question, and they give you a paragraph back. Versus the salesperson makes a big presentation and they say, no. Yes. I guess so. What'd you learn from any of that? Nothing. We don't have a cooperative relationship working. And sometimes we get to what people call the close. That's just where we're going to wrap up business and do the paperwork. And it's still just like that. We're talking, and they're giving us, I don't know. Well, maybe. See, there's no free flow of information. And we've got to get that happening. And when that happens, and in fact, in every case when a sale is made, that's what happens. But when sales aren't made, we got stuck and we didn't transfer over into this cooperative relationship. The last step of this four-step process, ACID, the last and final step is called D, determination, where we're going to determine the customer's values and determine what we've learned from this cooperative relationship and this exchange of information, and then determine the path to make the sale. Now, there's a real problem here. You see, as Dave Yoho has famously been quoted thousands of times, the sale is the natural conclusion to the successful completion of all the prior steps. And that ought to make sense. And by definition, the natural conclusion, the word conclusion means it comes at the end. The sale must come at the end. Problem is, most salespeople, just about all, in fact, the way our brain works shifts the D to the beginning. Instead of going to the house to arouse and affirm the people, and develop the relationship and cultivate the relationship and then gather information and worry about the sale way downstream, the salespeople start worrying about the sale when. As soon as they see an address they're going to with a time on it. And I'll prove this to you. Do what I did recently. Ask a group of people, a very large group of people, how many of you raise your hand if you look the people up and see their address and their home online? Only every hand went up, believe it or not. They want to see the house. Why is that? They want to make a determination. I said, how many of you look them up on Facebook? Half the room raised their hand. I said, why do you look them up on Facebook? Because they're trying to make a determination. And some of them said, well, I look them up on Twitter. Like that was better. You believe that? I said, why you do that? Because you want to make a determination. And the problem is that if you want to increase the productivity and build a healthy, dynamic, thriving sales organization, you'll do that when you get their mindset that the determination is last. The worrying about the sale is last. What's first is to go and give all of you, the best of you, to them. And employ one of the principles of persuasion, which is called reciprocation. And in business, it's taught reciprocation is one of the primary 6 principles of persuasion. But here's what it says. The seller has to give first. But see, the salesman's not giving first, is he? Because he's saying, well, I need to get some determination done. See, I got it backwards. I start with the D. And I'm going to start with the D and see how much you're going to give to me. I'm going to have my fantasy. I'm going to know how much time I get today. I'm going to know more about you and your situation and your home and your finances and how long you've been shopping and who you got prices from. And you can tell by the questions that a lot of people ask. They're in the determination phase. Now, the customer, unfortunately, feels that, as Brian said, as heat. So then they start closing off, and what happens to the cultivation and the free flow of information? Where does that go? Down the rabbit hole. And then immediately, because the rep's in the determination mode, what is he determining or she determining about the viability of this opportunity? Not too good. So then when he doesn't see it too good, how much of him or her is he giving to them? Not much. So then how much does the consumer give back? Not much. So see how the battle goes wrong right away? See how it's adversarial? But what if a rep said, I don't need to see a picture of the house. I don't need to look them up on Facebook. I don't need to look them up on Twitter. I don't need to know anything else, because when I go, I'm going to give everybody the best me anybody's ever got. In fact, I'm going to dedicate myself as a sales manager leader in an organization to get my people to give all of our prospects the very best person that day in that moment, even, listen now, to people that don't deserve it. They're going to get it too. The best. I'll tell you one thing. In 20-some years, selling in the home and teaching people how to do this, and now over 30 years, I never could figure out the person that really needed my best. At the same time, I could never really be sure of the person that bought that did not need my best. Now, as a result, I was not willing to lose. So I committed early on to give everybody my best, and that included a lot of people that truly didn't deserve my best. But I let a lot of people surprise me. You believe that? By giving my best, by first caring about them, by first saying, I'm here for you, my heart, my mind. I want to understand you, your home, your worries, your fears, your needs, and your wants. I'm going to start with the A first. I'm going to transfer to the C, then the I, and at the end will be the D. I promise you that if you can take this back a little bit, and you can get this in some people's minds and hearts, your salespeople will get different reactions from the prospects. Why? Because they're now acting in a different way. Now, if you flip real quick over to page 14, you're going to see something about professional questioning technique. And when we talk about needs assessments, we're talking about asking powerful questions instead of making profound statements. And one of the great ways to build rapport, which then leads to trust, respect, is when the seller asks more questions than statements. The problem is most salespeople have taught first-person selling, like first-person speaking in elementary school. I, we, our, us, right? And the few other. But what if it was focused on the questions, and we said, folks, what I want to do is understand what's important to you, what you need. Let me ask you a question. Let me just give you a couple ideas here. There's stuff on here. I'll give you a couple ideas. I'll give you an actual case example of some folks down in Texas. Here's one of my questions I love to ask. It's in the needs assessments I create for folks. We'll say, folks, tell me this. What are your 3 must-haves? I mean, the 3 most important things to you when hiring a contractor or remodeler for your home. And I'll pause for a second and say, now I know affordability is one, so let's just get the elephant in the room notified. Don't worry about that. I understand it's got to be affordable. It's got to fit somehow in a budget. So now that that's out of the way, what are the 3 most important things to you when hiring or selecting a contractor or remodeler to work on your home? You know what will happen? They'll tell you. You think if every person told you their 3 hot buttons, you might sell a couple more? Now watch this one. As soon as I'm done with that, I want to ask this question. Now tell me this. You, the opposite side of the coin. What would you say are your 3 greatest fears or worries when hiring a contractor or a modeler to come into your home? Now it gets good. Now if you've got a little trust and rapport, the people open up, you get a little free flow of information. Let me tell you what a lady down in San Antonio, Texas said not long ago. She said, well, my first concern is my jewelry. Now how many of you knew she was going to say that? I mean, because once we've been in sales all our life, we know all the things everybody says, right? In fact, we know so well, we don't have to ask them anymore, right? We can just talk, and say, hey, I got an idea. Why don't you just sit here and listen to me, tell you about me, right? Her second thing, she said, well, the second thing I guess would be, she was a little more talkative than her husband. She said, I think the second thing will be my husband's gun. He has a fine gun collection. Now, we all knew that one was coming, didn't we? And she said, and I guess the third really would be that this thing gets started and this drags on forever and just never gets completed. I said, let me make a note of that. Now, do you think that we customized a little bit of the presentation and the company story that was about to come now? Do you think that we customized it just a little bit to her wants and worries and fears? A little bit? Think just a little bit? Think we had a pretty good chance maybe of earning her business because we focused on her versus us? So when we get the needs assessment, we get in all the way through, but particularly early. See, what really tells a person you're interested in them is if you get them talking and listening to you. The funny thing is this. Most salespeople have been trained to talk and tell stories, but a problem is our stories are just not that interesting. And people rather tell somebody else their story and have somebody else interested and go, wow, that's interesting, and listen than be spoke to. And everybody's had a social situation like that, where you were somewhere in a social setting and someone just said, let me tell you about me, and we're out at school with my family, and they're this, and we got a boat over here, and we do this, and this go on and on and on. You're like, man, I don't like this person at all. But you get around somebody to ask you some questions, and you start telling your story, and they say, that's fascinating. When did you first get in that business? How'd that start? Wow, that sounds really interesting. So do you enjoy it a lot? Or and you just say, wow, that's it. Tell me more. And you walk away saying, man, I really like that rascal. Do you see what I'm saying? So you can change the dynamic early by focusing on quality questions, not the questions of, hey, have you got any estimates yet? Who you planning on seeing? Could I come back and be last? If you knew how many times a year somebody says, Joe, I want these show leads, do you think we should try to be last?
Yeah, if you want to go broke.
So, see, some people got a list of questions. They're just the wrong questions. Well, now we're going to switch over to Rick McIntyre, and he's going to share some good stuff with you.
Real quick. Hold on. He gets better. He gets better in a minute.
Yeah, wind him up.
There are in the needs assessment, when you look in here, there's specific questions, and I don't want you to leave without seeing. There's 5 key questions you've got to ask in the needs assessment. The rest is all fluff. Here are the 5. What's the problem that you're facing with your current situation? Mm-hmm. And I'm being vague here because everybody sells all kinds of different products, but naturally you would mention your product. Mm-hmm. Second, how long have you been experiencing those problems? Number 3, what has prevented you from doing anything about this until now? Number 4, why have you selected my company to do this work for you? That's a great question, because what are you going to hear? Either everything they already know about your company, or we haven't selected yet, we got all these other things getting ready to go on. This is determining how to deal with them. You're finding out. And then the 5th question is really just a breakdown of what Joe said on the top 3. Very simply, you could say, what do you fear the most about tackling this project? Once you have the answers to those 5 things, now you can make a determination on how to deal with them. What's the most important thing? Question number 6 comes later. What's the most important thing to you in handling this project? And you write that stuff down, and then you close on it. So and this is to assume the customer said price and quality and workmanship and all that, you feed that back. So what I'm understanding is when you find a company that gives you the price point that's affordable to you with the product that solves your problems, the workmanship that you expect out of this, warranty and protection afterwards, that's when your shopping stops and that's who you're selecting. So if you feel that way about me at the end of our visit, I would have at least earned the right to ask you for your business, wouldn't I? That's closing, that's professional selling, that's selling to the customer's value system. Tell us how to do it.
So the company story is probably one of the most misunderstood of all the steps in the sales process by salespeople. So probably the best thing we can do is just start by asking some questions. The question number one is, why do you have a company story? And what's the purpose of your company story? Maybe here's a better question. What do you want your prospect to take away from the company story? And so what's your number one go-to in how you deliver or present your company story? So let's just start by talking about what a company story is not, but it often sounds like. It often starts off by fundamentally talking about you or your company. That's what most salespeople do. That's what it's not. Or they start off by talking about the number of trucks you have, or the square footage in your warehouse, or the size of your showroom. And a lot of people proudly provide that information. It's not about the awards that you've won or the accomplishments of your company. Although, a lot of presentations feature what they call a brag page. It's really not about how long your company's been in business. Listen, if you think that customers really care, consumers really care about how long you've been in business, ask yourself this question, or answer this question for me. What are the two biggest sales in all of retail? The two biggest sales in all of retail, grand opening and the going out of business sale. And what do you think the biggest one of those two is? It's the going out of business sale. See, your customers don't care so much about how long you've been in business. Proof is they'll buy stuff from a company that'll tell them they're going out of business. And not only they're going out of business, all sales are final, you can't get a refund, and there's no warranty. Now, listen,
good point.
If your company has some benefit that they can explain to the prospect, then by all means explain that. Maybe you've been around for a lot of years, and in the course of that time you've developed some special techniques or some methods or some ways of doing things that set you apart. By all means, share that. Maybe over time you've accumulated a social reputation about your abilities that's so strong that thousands of customers have trusted you, so much so that they give you their friends and family to trust you as well. If you got that, share it. But if all you got to say about your company is, I've been in business for 20 years, hey, nobody cares. Listen, the most important thing is that you have to remember about this is that unfortunately, we just do what we're most comfortable with. So don't feel so bad about it. You just do what you know. But here's what unfortunately happens far too often, is the sales guy starts the presentation off by basically communicating clearly to the customer that here's what I want you to do. Now, Joe already alluded to this. I want you to sit down, be quiet, and listen to me tell you about me. That's what I want you to do. And then they get into the presentation and they start by talking about how big the company is and how long they've been around, and they show pictures of the warehouse and the trucks and all the people that work there and the owner and his dog. And here's the deal. None of that information is of any interest to the prospect, because none of that information directly answers their concerns or solves their problems. It just doesn't. And so if your company story sounds like an invitation to your prospect to sit down, be quiet, and listen to you tell them about you, it might be time for an update. So here's what a company story actually should look like. The process should be one where you invite your customer to sit down and have them tell you about them and what they want. And then you can explain to them how your company solves your clients' problems and how you can solve their problems too, all while building, as these guys have both poignantly made, building rapport and trust all along the way. So do me a favor, turn in your workbooks to page 23. See right there on page 23? Right there on page 23, right in the middle, you're going to see a list of things, stability, quality, warranty, service. You see those things right there? Your company story should accentuate those issues, right? Because they ultimately are the things that validate your price and help to reduce resistance. See, here's the key. You have to be able to do that. You've got to train your salespeople to deal with those issues, to get those issues on the table in a way that's responding to the customer's value system. See, when you do that, then you're building trust and rapport. See, here's the thing. The best language to start a company story with is not about you or your company. The best language to start a company story is a question. Let me give you an example. Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, when it comes to choosing a company that you want to trust your home to for this project, what are your expectations? What is it you're looking for? And then just shut up and listen. They're going to tell you what they want. They'll reveal their values to you. You know what? They're going to tell you some of the things you're going to need to do to earn their trust, and in the end, earn the order. And isn't that what you want? So, but back up there at the top of page 23, I'm going to share real quick with you a couple of ideas that will help make a really strong company story. One of them is right at the top of page 23, visual impact. Visual impact is a place where you can separate yourself from your competition and elevate your company in the mind of your prospect. If you're not using an iPad or a tablet for your presentation, you should consider it. A lot of our customers, a lot of our clients have already discovered that the low cost plus the ROI, it's proven to be a worthy investment. And by the way, it'll also help you create instant, credible impact with your customer. Another thing is post-negative suggestions. We recommend that you get those in the company story. These are just statements or questions that reduce resistance because it gets objections on the table, answered and off the table early on, so they don't come up later when you're trying to help them purchase the product. And then another thing that we recommend is the cue lines at the bottom of each page. And these are just little cue lines at the bottom of each page of your presentation. It just makes it easy for your sales reps to smoothly deliver the information that you want your customers to have. And then it also allows them to summarize that information with a question or a confirmation. And then it makes it really easy to transition into the next idea that you want to cover. So the bottom line is the company story is about rapport and trust. And so you just want to remember this. A great company story is an invitation for your prospect to sit down and tell you about them and what they want. And then you can deliver a presentation using their words and their values just to lead them to the natural conclusion that your company can and will solve their problems. And you're going to give them what they want and need for a beautiful, stress-free experience. A great company story will propel you past your competition. It'll reduce resistance and it will expand rapport. When you learn and when you train your sales teams to deliver that kind of company story, then you're going to be ready to ask the question that at Dave Yoel Associates we like to call the trust commitment question. And I'll give you an example how that might sound. So Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, based on what you told me you were looking for and the information I've just shared with you here today, would you say that ABC Company is a company you could trust your home to for this project? Your customer's response, far more often than not, will be a resounding yes. As has often been said, trust is the main ingredient in making a sale. Unfortunately, many salespeople are so focused on the price that they totally mishandle the company story. And when they do, they fail to build the trust that's necessary. And consequently, a lot of sales are lost that should have been consummated.